Do you want to live more sustainably but aren't sure where to start or how it fits in with your everyday living? The ReNewy Living Podcast simplifies sustainability so you can feel confident to take small, meaningful actions that fit into your lifestyle. Based on the lands of the Awabakal and Worimi people in Newcastle, Australia, you'll learn how to live lighter on our planet through practical ideas, stories from like-minded people, and examples of businesses doing great things. With an open heart and mind, join me, Mardi Lee, as we explore how to consume less, build stronger community connections, and thrive in your neighbourhood, wherever you call home. Welcome to the ReNewy Living Podcast. Retrofitting your home for energy efficiency can feel overwhelming, especially when it's less exciting or visible than any other reno upgrade. But when it comes to home comfort and savings, it's actually what's on the inside that counts. The simplest ways to improve your home's efficiency are often best shared by someone who isn't trying to sell you something. And that's where my guest, ReNewy Living community member Gayle from Lake Macquarie, comes in. Gayle's an active member of her local Sustainable Neighbourhoods Group and has a wealth of hands-on experience retrofitting her homes. She's here to share real, practical advice from her own retrofitting journey. Let's hear her story. G'day, Gayle.
Hello, Mardi.
First up, what is the difference between retrofitting and renovating?
That's a really valuable question to ask because a lot of people get confused. Renovating a house is where you're wanting to enlarge it or you want to change something. Say if you've got an old kitchen, you might want to upgrade the kitchen or you need another bedroom or something like that. That's really renovation. Retrofitting can involve renovation, but retrofitting is where you're doing things that make the property more energy efficient. So you're looking at certain things you need to do to achieve that goal. And when you retrofit your home, you make it much more comfortable to live in and you save money in power bills.
And you've had a lot of experience retrofitting.
And as an owner-builder twice as well. So,
wow. Big job.
6 houses I've worked on.
Yeah. And you've retrofitted all of those?
Some were brand new, 2 were brand new, but I've retrofitted 4 old houses.
Living in an older house, how do you know where to start with what areas in the house to retrofit and to make more energy efficient?
Well, I think it's valuable, first of all, to look at your orientation. What direction does your house face? Because that's really very important. But also think about which rooms in your house feel more comfortable to be in. So that'll give you a guide as to maybe things you can do to start to make a difference. I think that's a critical step in the journey toward retrofitting your house.
Can you give us an example of your house where we're recording right now? An example of what type of room that you started with?
I started in a number of fronts, in essence, because I had to do a lot of repairs first of all. The retrofitting came after the initial repairs. And so what I started doing was looking at where I had gaps everywhere. There are gaps everywhere here. So I draft-proofed, and I've shown you some examples of that draft-proofing. Doors, windows, just skirting boards. There were so many areas where I had gaps. So the gaps will let the heat or the cold come in. So you're wanting just to thermally insulate. You're wanting to create something that can work for you where you can moderate what the temperatures inside that space.
So, for example, when you showed me around your house, there's different types of draft proofing that you've used. So the door that you've got it's an external door. It's not a main external door, but there's 2 different sorts of draft proofing that you've got on the base of that door. Tell us about those.
On the outside, that goes out to a little porch, I put a different draft proofing one that can make sure it actually stops any water ingress, any rain coming in, except no rain ever falls there now because I've done something else externally there. But it's still a very effective, way of draft proofing. On the internal, because I still felt that there was some potential for air to come through, because sometimes when you even put these things on, you might have little gaps at the end. So I got another one from a big local hardware store that many of us go to, and put that on the inside. And it's really easy. You can take it off if you need it. It's just held on with two little brackets and it rolls.
Yeah, I've
So
never
it's
seen
brilliant.
one like that before. And when you were showing me, that was really easy. So as you said, it's got the two hooks down the bottom, and it's like
And it
a
just
little
sits on
fuzzy
it.
wuzzy soundproof kind of thing, isn't it?
And in 4 different little compartments, they all roll. So it's kind of handy. So it moves, because if you've got like, a door snake, you've got to get and move it all the time. So these are just easy. Make it simple.
And also you said before that you can take it off if you don't need it.
Yeah.
Like if you need a little bit of air but not too much air coming
You can
in.
take it off easily, and you just leave the little brackets there. And you can buy it from our local hardware store. Just cut it to size. Work out. Just get your tape measure out. Do all that kind of stuff. It's really easy. If I can do it, other people can do it.
Yeah, great. So that's 2 sorts of draft proofing on the bottom of the door.
Yep.
Now, on the opposite side of that porch, because this is what the door is we're talking about, there's another door. Like it's
Another external
door.
So internal external door that leads onto. I've got a funky kind of house here, but they both open out to a little porch, internal kind of funny porch. On the other one, the actual door initially was short, and whenever it closed, you'd see this great gap, of 3 or 4 centimetres, whatever it was. So we cut a piece of timber and attached that onto the top of the door. So when it closed, at least we were actually trying to seal the door. But then I went further than that, and I had bought another product that just, I put on the external part. You can go external or internal, and it's just a brilliant product made or provided by people in Melbourne. And you just pull a little strip off and it sticks on. It's got 2 parts to it. I showed you before. You'll have a picture of that at your web link. That was really great.
Yeah, and it makes a big difference as well. Like when you close the door, you can feel
the door seals against it, because the main thing is to try and stop, because people can heat a space in winter, but they're losing, the heat's going out because you've got all these gaps. So just look at where your gaps are and what you can do with those gaps. And these are some simple steps that can be taken that don't cost an arm and a leg.
Yeah, that's right. An absolute quick win and low cost as well, and very much DIY.
Yep. Well, certainly all of that was DIY. Yep.
So draft proofing your home is just one way to be energy efficient. And I know that you've got
first step.
A critical first step. Great. And I know that you've got another couple of ways to make your home more energy efficient. Let's move on to the next one.
Okay.
What do you feel like after draft proofing is the next thing?
I think insulating is critical for any house, and if you've got, an old house, you may not have good insulation. So to look at, what can you do to improve insulation, and they, because sometimes some houses are just inefficient, they're not really working very well. So ceiling insulation is really important because it helps to stop the heat coming in from outside. Older houses may not have isolation or insulation under the actual roofing. Some may. So look at those kind of issues, the insulating, and then also insulating walls if you can. I did that with a company, and they came and they drilled all these holes internally in my place here, and they pumped insulation into my external walls. They were able to test where I had no insulation and that they filled it that way, and then just sealed up the holes. I haven't painted them after that yet, but that was done. The other thing to do as well, I've got a raised floor here, raised timber floor, and I'm up on piers. So I've also done subfloor insulation. You can buy that from the local hardware store. You can do some of that yourself, but I did actually get the company that did the walls for me to do some other subfloor insulation, because they were able to get it in a big long roll, and they also had the right tools, and it was limited space to get in. And I thought, no, I'm too old to do that, so I paid them to do that. But toward the front of the house, I just got in myself, and it was polystyrene sheets, and I was able to do those. Bought from a local hardware store.
What's the advantage of subfloor insulation?
You can get a lot of cold come up through the subfloor. I can recall the guy who did some work in my kitchen here. I remember he was telling me he lived at a place called Lambton and he was in an old house and not a terribly good orientation. And he told me how cold his house was and no subfloor insulation. So, and I remember talking to him about it, and he said, it's freezing, absolutely freezing. And he'd been there 20-something years. He might have been able to get someone, like pay someone like, to get under with the rolls and the like and do that, but he didn't feel inclined to do it. But he would have had huge power bills. So you can get a lot of cold come up through if it's a timber floor.
Yes.
And even if you've got carpet and you've got flooring down, you still get the cold come through, like that carpet, I'm told, gives only a protection. I think someone might have told me like an R rating, which is what they use for insulation. They've only about 1 or just over 1. It's better when we go to a much higher R rating, gives you much better protection from heat or from cold.
So for the R ratings, so perhaps an R4 is a thicker insulation than an R2.
Much more effective. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. Like I showed you this before too, hopefully this can be in, I'm having a little granny flat built in the backyard and I'm doing it really sustainably, my bedroom granny flat. And I've got R4 insulation. I upped the insulation. It was only meant to be about R2.5 and I've got them to give me R4 in the ceiling. That will make it much more energy efficient. Yeah, much denser thing. So it's much harder for any heat coming in through the roof to actually get through to that.
What type of insulation have you researched that is best for your home?
Well, look, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. I think have a look around. There's different types of insulation. You get wool insulation, you get, like a synthetic or polyester insulation. What I've done in the back, fiberglass insulation, there are numerous ones. Depends on what some people will go certain ways because of environmental reasons. I did that some years ago and I insulated and I bought a wool insulation and I insulated in a mud brick house I was living in way down the south coast of New South Wales. And I don't know how effective it really was ultimately. It cost me a lot. So I've tended to go more for the synthetic because it's just going to stay there, do its job for a long time. But it depends too on what you can afford. But just look, check it out, have a look online and see what you feel is maybe the best insulation. You can get information about what is recommended for your area as well. Yeah.
With the insulation that you've got in your house, have you insulated the entire ceiling?
My house is, the old part of the house has got a gable roof, so it's a pitched and you can get up in there. Yeah, that's all insulated. And I have a skillion bit at the back, so that's where it's just like a sloping flat roof. And that was when I bought the house. That bit had been added on maybe 20 years before. So I believe there was insulation in there. So I'm not really quite sure. I can't really readily get access to it. I have, in fact, though, pulled up some of the areas in the back because I had some old skylights that I replaced. Knowing if you've got a skylight on the roof, you've got potential for rain coming in because the flashing might be very effective, or you can, and you have no insulation there. So I sort of decided I'd get rid of these really big skylights in the back south-facing lounge room, and I've replaced them with, I'll call them solar lights, but they're like, there's a little solar panel on the front of my roof, a cable that runs down, and the diffuser, the panel that just sits there, it looks like a skylight. But so I got rid of the old ones and got some new sheets of colour bond for that area and got insulation. It was all done. I paid a handyman to do that job.
So that's even an extra bonus because you've still got natural light coming in.
But it was actually an LED light. So, but it's triggered by a solar panel. So you don't actually have, so there's no access to the outside, but you've got the panel. It looks like a normal skylight, but as I was outlining to you before, Mardi, that when I had my front bathroom here, it's got an old-fashioned skylight in it. And we had an East Coast low not long after I moved here. It cost me $1,000 to get it fixed because I had water pouring down the walls, 2 walls around that. The flashing had failed. I didn't know about these, let's call them the solar skylights at that point. But there's no insulation there, plus the flashing that was there wasn't terribly effective and it had to be replaced. Yeah, it cost me $1,000. It's a lot of money. So if I could have known then and I could have repaired it, I'd go for one of these solar ones any day, because you can seal the roof. You don't have, water can't get in because you've got your roofing there.
And then
no hole in the roof anymore.
No hole in the roof. Extra advantage, and
Brilliant.
You can cover your ceiling cavity with the insulation.
Yeah, yep.
So then it makes
and you
your
can
home
also
more
even
efficient.
above them, separate from and you can actually put it directly on top of it. So it's up in the roof cavity, so you can, not only you've got no hole in the roof, in your ceiling, because this diffuser sits either, you can cut, some are actually surface mounted, and some just sort of sit a little bit out on a little frame. And I've got both here, all bought from the local hardware store.
In addition to the insulation, I did notice on the top of your house, on the roof of your house, you still have like a solar whirlybird thing.
Yeah.
Why do you need that when you've got insulated ceiling?
Because mine's an old house, I've got minimum, there's some size or like insulation, like material under the terracotta tiles in the front part of the house. The back part is Colorbond on the skillion part, but it's not terribly effective. Like, it's an old house. But roof cavities can get really hot anyway. And, even if you've got insulation under your roofing, they can still get quite hot. And it also depends on the colour of your roof. If you've got a dark roof, it'll get even hotter. And some of the figures I've seen have just been astounding in terms of the heat gain you can actually get that can sit in your roof cavity. Now, if that sits there, even with insulation, I reckon it's going to find its way through somehow. So I put in this thing called a solar whiz, because I just knew that it's good if we can get rid of the hot air from the roof cavity. And the solar whiz, one solar whiz made in Australia, in Melbourne, is the equivalent of 30 whirlybirds. Whirlybirds just don't cut the mustard at all. This is brilliant, and I've been really amazed at how effective this solar whiz is. I came home just not long after putting it up there, having it done, and it was actually put in place of an old whirlybird. But it's on the south side of my house, but it sits there, and it's got a little frame at the top with a little solar panel, and the solar panel faces north, even though the solar whiz is on the south of the house, but it gets its north orientation, so it runs. And I came home not long after having it installed, and it was really, really hot. I hadn't done anything inside the house. And I came home and there was 7 degrees difference between the outside of the house and inside the house. I was bowled over. I thought, brilliant.
It shows that insulation does make a
Insulation
real difference.
and looking at where you get heat gain, and that was one way of doing heat gain. With that solar whiz, I also opted to actually link it to a cable so I could plug it into power, and I've done that. And I've got a thermostat in my roof cavity set at 24 degrees. So, but all day during the day, it'll run on solar if it needs to. But my thermostat is set at 24. So if it's really hot at night and it's still sitting hot up there, it'll come on, and it'll be coming on from my power. It's just a way. So, but you don't have to do that with the power. You can just have it run off the solar. So it'll work during solar time.
How easy was it to install the installation?
Well, look, you can do insulating yourself. I've insulated many ceilings. So if you've got like a gable roof, like I call it like a triangle on top of your house, yeah, you can get in there. Just be careful, where you, put a headlamp on your head or whatever. But if you don't feel you can do it, just pay someone to do it. It's not difficult to do.
Great. So that's like the next step in how to make your home more energy efficient. We've talked about draft proofing and we've talked about insulation. Let's move on to shading.
Shading's a really critical one as well, because you've got to think about the movement of the sun, and just what happens. And when we have summer, the sun is much, much higher in the sky. Think how high the sun is. And it also starts a long way back on the east. So if you get your head around, direction, orientation, just look at where does the eastern sun come in the morning, that kind of thing. So shading you can do in a number of ways. You can put awnings on the outside. It's much better if you put something on the outside than the inside, because if the sun hits the glass, that heat comes in, And that heat is actually trapped and can't get readily back out. So the main thing is to try and even stop the sun coming in if you don't want it in, like in summer. So you can do shading by way of deciduous trees or awnings, or you can even you can have a fixed awning, or I've even got some roll down
shade cloth blinds.
Shade cloth blinds.
You've got a real good variety of shading, exterior shading for your house, depending on whether it's north or west.
Yeah, and west is also the really critical one, like because the western sun hangs in the sky for a long, long time. So it's really good to think about your west. And the west is the area where you can often get most heat gain, and that's a major problem. So even think about if you've got concrete paving right at the edge of your house and it's on the west, it's going to get hot as can be. You know, it will be a furnace. You know, be really, really hot. And take account of climate change, and you know the heat gains that are forecast as well. So on my western side, I've got grass and I've got stepping stones. So that helps to moderate. Plus I've got plants as well out there. Plus I've also put a deciduous tree, only small at the moment, but eventually that will grow and that will help to shade a bit of the western side.
And a couple of those windows you have on the west
and I've got
permanent awnings over it. So it still lets in the light when you need the light.
Keeps the rain out too.
And keeps the rain out. That's right. So you can have your window open. So
once again, bought from a local hardware store.
It's just really showing how these are really simple ways to become more energy efficient. And yeah, as I was saying in the introduction, it's what's on the inside that counts. It's not going to be the big talking point when your friends come over for a party and going, wow, look at my outside shades that I've just got on my insulation in my house, but they make a big difference.
Well, they might come around, they might feel your house feels very comfortable to be in. One would hope that would be the scenario, because it does make a difference, you know, because it's interesting to talk to people, like I mentioned before, that tradesman who is a kitchen guy from Lambton. And, you know, him just saying how cold his house was. So, you know, I walked him through some of the things that he could maybe look. I don't know if he did them, but, you know, like it's nice to come home and feel comfortable in your house.
That's the key
really
point.
Critical. So when you can get, and also with shading, it's also really important, like in the cooler months, to let the sun in, you know. So all those things are really important. So just think about what direction do you face. The term they use is orientation. And just look at what you can do, and the movement of the sun, how much higher in the sky in summer, starting from a long way back, and in winter, much lower in the sky. So those things are important. Also, the other thing externally is eaves. How wide is your eave as well? A lot of the older houses have minimal eaves, so that creates more of a handicap in terms of, you know, protecting it from heat gain in summer.
The shading that you've got on your north side is movable for both winter and summer. So what you were saying about how the winter sun sits a lot lower, it means that you've got like a what do you call this system?
Awning, like it's a wind out.
It's a wind out system that you operate from the inside.
But can't we use our arms, you know, in our hands? So I got one that I could just wind with a winder. Easy, though a bit cheaper than a motorised one. And you think, well, what could happen if a motorised thing, something goes wrong, doesn't work, and you want to move it, you know? So I like the idea of being able to manually do things.
I think that your home, it does feel comfortable. When you sit inside your home, it has that great climate zone.
Many old homes have actually got these vents in the walls. Can you see up there?
Oh, the vents. Yeah, they do too.
And that's another thing that's actually valuable to look at. Like I reconfigured this whole room, and there was one over there and it was just all patched up and covered. But so what I did was I filled the holes in. So we don't, you know, because they were used in houses a long time ago, because people had a lot of gas and, you know, and various other things that were maybe not terribly good for your health. So I wanted to make sure you actually got, you know, air movement, and that opens to inside the wall cavity. So it's good to actually close those up. You can put a cover over them, maybe you can even buy a little cover. Look, I just got some that filler stuff, filled it, patched it, painted it. You will never know it's there anymore.
No, and you're right, because I didn't even notice those. And this is what, 1950s, 1960s house? 1950s weatherboard.
Weatherboard, some hardy plank and weatherboard,
combination.
The 1950s,
Yeah.
Like an old house.
That's a really good point, because not every house is fully gyprocked on the inside.
A lot will actually, older houses will all have those vents like that, and you can, like just look at where is the air coming in, and do you want to get that air in? They're things to think about.
Thank you so much for your time, Gayle. It's been really valuable, and I hope this has made you think about where you might start with making your home more energy efficient, particularly if you've got a home that is an older style home. An older style can mean, 10 years plus? So look at how you can draft proof your home. You can look at the insulation, both in the ceiling, the floors, the subfloor, and the walls as a possibility, and taking Gayle's ideas for shading the external sides of your homes, particularly the north side and the west side. And really, you just want to make your home as comfortable as it can be. So thanks so much, Gayle.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the ReNewy Living Podcast. I hope you're feeling more confident about taking a localised and actionable approach to living sustainably. If this episode has inspired you to take simple action, please follow the ReNewy Living Podcast so you can catch every episode. We'd love it if you could share this episode with your friends. It's a great way to spread the word and help more people join the conversation about living sustainably. You can even send me an email with the episode that really made it for you. Hearing your positive actions for change helps me understand how these stories work within our shared communities. Head over to my website, renewyliving.com.au, for the show notes and blog posts from this episode. I look forward to sharing more stories from the people of Newcastle as we delve into our community's diverse social and environmental practices for positive planetary change from a localised perspective.